On page 20 of the textbook, we are looking at a section called Absolute and Relative Cell References. Spreadsheet formulas refer to cells. Each reference a formula makes to a cell can be relative or absolute. So far, we have only used relative cell references in formulas. Relative cell references automatically adjust when a formula is copied to other cells. When a formula is copied to the right, the column letters automatically advance. For example, the formula equal A2 plus A3 will become B2 plus B3 when it is copied one column to the right. When a formula is copied down, the row numbers automatically increase. For example, the formula equal B3 plus C3 will become equal B4 plus C4 when copied down to the next row. And then they start to talk about absolute cell references on the top of page 21. Absolute cell references do not change when a formula is copied. Cell references can be made absolute by typing a $sign on either side of the column letter when creating a formula. Without the $signs, cell references are relative. So they show you an example here, examples of relative and absolute cell references. So it's a relative reference if it doesn't have the $signs, B1, A10, D15. And it's an absolute cell reference if it does have the $signs, $B, $1, A, $10, D, $15. There is a shortcut there. Don't bother with it. It doesn't work particularly well on a laptop. Using absolute and relative cell references in a formula worked example. So you actually have this example in your files. It's a p21 example. In the following worked example, you will see why absolute cell references are needed and what happens when formulas containing absolute and relative cell references are copied. Create a new spreadsheet workbook and enter the data shown. This is it. And we move on to the top of the next page. And what we're actually going to have happen here is we're going to deliberately do it wrong to show you that you need an absolute cell reference and what happens if you don't use an absolute cell reference. So what we're trying to do is work out the VAT on the DVD player. And the VAT rate is sitting up in B1 and the cost of the DVD player is in B4. So initially we might think we need to multiply B4 by B1. Let's try that and see what happens when we copy it into the other cells. So question 1, position the cell pointer in C4 and enter the following formula, equal B4 multiplied by B1. Press enter. It has given us an answer for the DVD player. It's when we copy that formula down to the other rows that we're going to run into problems as things stand. Question 2 says, copy this formula down as far as C10. And suddenly we're getting all sorts of strange things happening. Table 111 displays the results of the VAT calculations and the formula used in each calculation. So we're just seeing the result here, but if we look into the formula bar, we can see the actual formulas, and he has printed them on the textbook. And what basically happens is that in the first row for the DVD player, it's fine because we are multiplying B4 by B1. But when we go to the formula for the digital camera, because we move down a row, it now knows to read from B5 to get the cost of the digital camera, but it also thinks that it has to move down from B1 to get the VAT rate. And of course, there's nothing in the cell below B1. It's an empty cell, which is why we're getting a 0 here. And then when we move to the following row, again, it correctly moves down to the cost for the fax machine, but now it's trying to get the VAT rate from B3, which is actually a word, and you can't calculate using a word. And then all the other ones are crazy as well because they're now using these figures for the VAT rate. So On the textbook, it says, because this formula contains relative cell references, both cell references change each time the formula is copied down to the next row. This is correct for the cell reference that refers to the cost, but incorrect for the cell reference that refers to the VAT rate. And the main text says, because the original formula equal B4 multiplied by B1 contains relative cell references, both cell references have changed as a result of the copy operation. However, all costs must be multiplied by the VAT rate stored in B1. The formulas in cells C5 to C10 are giving incorrect answers because the reference to B1 has changed to B2, B3, B4, B5, B6 and B7. How do we solve this? To prevent the reference to B1 from changing, we need to make it absolute by typing $ on either side of the letter B, giving equal B4 multiplied by $B $1. When this formula is copied, the reference to B1 won't change. So first of all, we're going to delete the formulas in cells C4 to C10. Now you might ask, well, why am I deleting the one up here that seems to be correct? Because it's the source of all the problems. So we delete all of those formulas that are not correct. And we go back to C4 and we put in the correct formula. So question 4 says, position the cell pointer in C4 and enter the following formula. Equal B4 multiplied by $B $1. And by the way, to get the dollar sign, it's Shift and 4 on your keyboard. And now we press enter. We're still getting 44 because the problem was never in the first row, it was in all the other rows. Now when we copy this down, it should behave itself. So question 5, copy this formula down as far as C10. And table 112 displays the result of the VAT calculations and the formula used in each calculation. So we actually see it here on our page as well. There might be a little bit of formatting to do, which we will do in a moment. So you can see that in each cell, the reference to the cost changes as we go down to the next row and the next row and the next row and so on. But the reference to the VAT rate always stays as B1 or $B $1. So in the first row, it's equal B4 by $B $1. In the second row, it's equal B5 by $B $1. In the next row, it's equal B6 by $B $1, and so on. To make it look like it looks in the textbook, I am just going to make these be currency format. So if we highlight these and we go to our Home tab, and if we go to our formatting and ask for currency, we will have the correct format. Save the spreadsheet as absolute cells example. So I'll save that later. And there's a little extra note. Absolute cell references are generally used in multiplication and division formulas. It would be unusual, but not impossible, to see an absolute cell reference in an addition or subtraction formula. The most common use of absolute cell references is when applying a single percentage rate, such as a tax rate, to multiple cells. So that's the end of the video explaining absolute and relative cell references.